Now, when we have a day like today, which is nice and sunny, kind of a beautiful spring morning, we don't tend to think what it took to make that day. What did it take? I want to give you a couple of facts about the sun. The sun that we see up in the sky. The one that warms us, the one that gives us all the energy we have on this earth. The sun radiates more energy. This is kind of an interesting fact. I was fascinated with it when I heard it. The sun radiates more energy in 1 second than all human civilization has consumed since it began. The sun, which Yahweh created, which Yahweh set in place, which He set in its proper position as opposed to the earth, it radiates more energy in 1 second than all human civilization has consumed since civilization began. Does that put things in a little bit clearer context for you? As to Yahweh's greatness, we think we're eating up the energy right now. We're not even beginning to tap into the energy that's available. Every second, in the core of the sun, 600 million tons of hydrogen become fused and make helium. It creates 500 out of the 600 million tons of hydrogen, which is actually, it was these lessons that scientists used to create the hydrogen bomb. When they started to, through their calculations and everything, figure things out, back in the 20s is when they figured this out as to what was taking place in the sun. They tried to imitate it and created the hydrogen bomb, which is the fusion, the fusing of two hydrogen elements. Out of the 600 million tons that collides, 595 million tons of helium is created. Now there's a little disparity in the numbers there. 5 million ton, right? Now think of the volumes that we're dealing with here. 600 million tons colliding, and you know what fusing means. Two elements hit so hard they become one. Become one element. I could do a little example up here. Let's see, do I have something? All right, we'll use these as two different things. You take these two, and I could hit them as hard as I can, and all you're going to do is break them probably. But they're still going to be two distinct elements. What happens in the core of the sun is these two elements would come together so hard, so fast, that they would actually become one thing. And the energy is created by the fusion of those two different elements. It's your little science lesson today. Now, I want you to keep this in the context of today. Keep looking out the window, keep looking at the sun. It looks so peaceful and wonderful out there. It's nice, it's beautiful. We love a nice, warm, sunny morning. Birds are singing, and we know all's right in the world. You have these 5 million tons that transfer into energy every second in the core of the sun. That is the energy that runs the earth. That's the energy that runs the earth. The 5 million tons of matter that you lose by the fusion that takes place translates into energy. That energy is the equivalent, now get this one, that energy, that 5 million tons of energy is the equivalent of 1 megaton nuclear bombs going off simultaneously. 1 billion, 1 megaton nuclear bombs going off simultaneously. We think it's a nice, peaceful day out there. There's a lot of work going on in the shop. You think it's quiet on the sun? It's not quiet on the sun. If you took, to get a little bit of an idea, how many of you have ever been to a rock concert? How many of you despise rock concerts? If you took the volume at a rock concert, turned every one of the gauges all the way up, every guitar, every mic'd drum, everything, turned it all up, placed speakers side by side, the whole exterior of the sun, and turned it on all at once. That's the amount of sound that's taking place up there right now. The loudest rock concert you can think, with all the gauges turned up, speakers set next to each other on the entire surface of the sun. That's what it sounds like there. It's a nice peaceful day out there. Kind of nice and quiet, isn't it? And we sit out there and enjoy the sun. Well, there's some things that take place to get it that way. And as we're going through some of these things, I want you to remember that it is Yahweh that created the sun and placed it there. And He did so for mankind, so we can exist, so life can be sustained on this planet. The sun is a minor star. It's not a major star. It's not a big star. It's a minor one. When you have the fusion of those elements, the hydrogen colliding in the core of the sun, it creates heat and it creates light. They're called photons. They're created from the fusing process. Now they've got to go from the core, which is this huge constant collision taking place. You've got to take those photons from there and get them to Earth. As they are going, they are running into hydrogen atoms colliding with each other. They have to pass through them or be absorbed and then be re-emitted on the other end. So this is a constant battle to get out of the core. And it's a slow process. It takes a long time. Now the further out you get, the less dense it is. For context, the core of the sun is 10 times more dense than lead is. 10 times as dense as lead. And it's liquid. It's liquid. Something that is that dense should be a solid, but because of the heat that's generated from this constant process, it's a liquid. Well, they call it plasma, but that's another story. It takes approximately 16 weeks for a photon to get from the core to pass through to the outer layer of the sun. 16 weeks. After the collision took place and it gets through all these other atoms, gets to the outer core. It takes approximately 10 days to pass through the outer core. And then it starts its journey in earnest toward Earth. How long do you think it takes to get, once it clears the outer core, how long do you think it takes till it gets to Earth? Katie got it. 8 minutes. 8 minutes to go, how many miles? 93 million miles. Just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. So now, we're at this peaceful, beautiful morning that we're all enjoying. This has taken place because Yahweh structured it that way and set it up this way. That's the brilliance that John saw in Revelation 1. Yahshua's face shining as the brilliance of the sun. Just as an aside, you know the sunspots, and they talk about sunspot activity. You know the sunspots look like dark spots. They look like zits on the face of the sun. That's my opinion. A sunspot is 10 times brighter than the full moon if you would pull it off the sun and move it somewhere else. It's the comparison of brightnesses that make it look like a dark spot. This is, to me, this is the kind of thing that fascinates me. I always had an interest in astronomy because you really do begin to see and appreciate Yahweh at work. You get to understand what He's doing and what He's all about. I'd like to go to Matthew 13. Matthew 13. Another thing that happens when you start to look in these contexts, when you start to look at things from Yahweh's perspective, is to appreciate the insignificance of man. We think the universe revolves around us. And we are so insignificant to what's taking place. And yet we think that we are it, that it's all about us. Matthew 13. And we'll look at the parable of the weeds. Verse 36. Yahshua left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and they said, "Would you please explain something to us? Could you explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field?" Verse 37, he answered, "The one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out His angels, and they will weed out of His kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then, after that's all taken place, verse 43, then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." Does that give you a little bit of a perspective as to what Yahweh was trying to do with us? And it just makes me shake my head saying, why? Why does He deal with us? I got this thought this past week as I was trucking along. You know, Yahshua has been dealing with sin. Started out with Adam and Eve, and it went from there. People either get their lives together and die, or they don't get their lives together. But either way you look at it, you go through this process of Yahshua dealing with people in their sin, and then they die. They're gone. They are no more. And it starts all over again with the next generation. And the next generation. And the next generation. And the next generation. All the way down to our time. And they're not sick of us. They still see hope for humankind. After all these hundreds upon hundreds of generations, when all they've been dealing with is sin. A baby's born, oh, such a cute little baby. And that baby grows up to be a problem child. And they might get their act together, they might not, they die, and then their kids come along and do it all over again. And they don't get tired of it. They don't get tired of the process. But according to what Yahshua was telling us here in this passage, it's going to end. It's going to end. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. And as the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man is going to send out His angels. They are going to weed out of His kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. There is an end point to all this. just as, and I'm going to insert at this point, there is an end to the sun. There is an end to the sun. There is, when you look up at the sky, you see this glowing orb. It has boundaries, it has limits, it is fuel. Remember I started out by talking about the hydrogen and the helium and the energy? Well, these things are colliding, creating all this energy. That glowing sun that you see up there has limits. The limits are the amount of fuel it has. And it can operate, but it's going to have an end. So we better start moving away, because as the sun dies, it actually flames out. And it's one of the few things that as it gets cooler, as it cools off, it gets hotter. So as it expands before it collapses in, it's going to consume this earth, and then this earth will be no more, because it'll be totally out. So get ready. We only have 3 billion years to get our